Hi, this is Charlene Chamberlain for WTER, and this is Front Row. My guest today is an award-winning filmmaker, an Emmy Award-winning composer, producer, music historian, an archivist, an engineer, a BMI composer, a music publisher, a drummer, a videographer, and I don't know what else to tell you about this man, but he just does everything, and his name's George Manney. Hi, George. Thanks for being on the show today.
How you doing, Charlene?
It's great to see you again.
It's great to see you.
I saw you a couple weeks ago. George actually was our VIP guest host for our Beatles 50th anniversary Fab 4 pre-concert party, and George was kind enough to host this party for about 40 of our VIP patrons at the performance, and he brought a lot of Beatles memorabilia that has been unseen by the public, and we had a great time visiting with George and listening to all of his Beatles stories. So how about a Beatles story to start us off?
A Beatles story?
One of your Beatles experiences, maybe one of your phone calls.
My personal?
Yeah, your personal story.
Well, I was so impressed with hearing the Beatles the first time, and I was fortunate that my parents were musicians.
Yeah, what did your mom play?
My mother played guitar, cocktail drums, and upright bass.
Wow.
And sang.
And that was like the 50s and 60s?
40s.
40s.
Yeah, I guess she was at a young age, yeah.
Right.
And I know her father wasn't very fond of it.
Of course not at that age. I know when I was 12, I wanted to be a percussionist, and that was back in the 60s, and my parents said, girls don't play drums, you have to take piano lessons. So that's what I ended up doing. And what did your dad play?
He played drums.
Okay, so that's why you play drums, probably.
Well, yeah, the odd thing is I started out with a little saxophone.
Okay.
And then went to accordion.
Accordion? Do you play keyboards too?
Well, that's what I used to compose on.
Okay.
Because I'm a lousy guitar player.
Okay.
And then drums became my main instrument that I was doing gigs with.
Right.
For many years.
So flash forward a little bit here. I know that you've had lots of different bands throughout your career. So what was the band that kind of got noticed by Apple Records?
That was my high school band.
Your high school band?
Well, yeah, and it was with two of my classmates from grade school and high school.
Okay. What was the band? What was the name of the band?
Well, we called ourselves Stone Dawn.
Okay.
And it always wound up in the paper the wrong way when I would book the band. They spelled it stoned, S-T-O-N-E-D.
Like stoned.
Then
right.
on, O-N.
Oh.
It's supposed to be stone and then dawn, like the dawn.
Right.
So they would get that wrong, and it was embarrassing at times.
Right, I'm sure.
But that was the first band. We were in high school, and we started to write our own songs and try to compete with all the other Philadelphia bands like Naz or Woody's Truck Stop and Elizabeth and American Dream. And while they were older than us, we were still in high school, but we wound up playing a lot of gigs with all these guys.
Right.
So that was great.
For them,
yeah,
probably. Yeah.
But so we became in a competitive field because we were writing original material. And it was actually one of the gigs we did at the original Electric Factory.
Which was, the original Electric Factory was where?
22nd and Arch.
Right. Exactly.
And it was one of the gigs there when Winkle from the American Dream approached me and said, I'd like to record your band. And the American Dream and Nick Jameson.
Right. Great song.
They built a studio in their rehearsal place. And as you know, Nick went on after the American Dream, became part of Foghat and a famous record producer, and then now he's a TV actor and voiceover
I know,
specialist.
it's pretty amazing. He's had a great career. And I do love that song. It's called Ain't Searching? What's it called?
I Ain't Searching.
I Ain't Searching Anymore. Great song.
And
so did they recommend you to get in touch with Apple, or did you just do that on your own?
I did this via a girl pen pal that I have from England, who gave me the contact information.
And what happened?
I wrote a letter. I took pictures of our band and some articles where we played at, and I addressed it to Paul McCartney because he seemed the most open to signing new artists to the label.
Okay.
And he was producing a lot of acts.
Right.
And I got a response in 2 weeks.
In the mail?
Yes.
Right, which doesn't,
and then
we wouldn't do that today, but...
No, and the funny thing was that they addressed it as I was the lawyer, because they put Esquire for my name.
Right.
They didn't realize I was the actual drummer.
Right.
So, yeah, and after I got the letter, I started flipping out, and I was like, oh my God. So
Paul McCartney wrote me a letter, right?
So I saw the phone number on there, and I called a couple times.
You called Apple Studios in London.
I finally got through to McCartney one time, and one time, actually, luckily, to John Lennon. So I actually spoke to them.
To both of them, right.
But they were a little short on the phone, and I didn't know it at the time. It was during the period of them doing Let It Be, so there was a lot of turmoil.
Sure. And
it was in January of '69 when my whole contact was going back and forth.
So did anything ever happen with that music? I mean, was Apple interested, or did they listen to it?
I had to send a demo, and then Peter Asher turned us down. Who was the A&R guy.
Do you have the turn down? Do you have the turn down letter? Oh,
I don't know where that's at.
Well, you know, I know you have so much memorabilia at home. What are some of the most unusual or highly collectible pieces that you have in your collection? Well, before we get into that, let's just say a little bit about George. He is also the historian for the Walk of Fame, Philadelphia Walk of Fame? Is that what your title is? Are you the historian?
Recently I was asked to be the historian and archivist for the Philadelphia Music Alliance that produces the Walk of Fame on the Avenue of the Arts in Center City, Philadelphia.
Right. Exactly. And you also have worked with the Rock Hall in Cleveland, too. Don't they have some of your memorabilia there?
Yes. How that came about was while I was doing this large documentary, I took a side venture and made two little films, and one was about J.C. Dobbs, the South Street Bar, and then
the famous J.C. Dobbs. Yes. And it's called Meet Me on South Street,
which because I wanted to use that from the title of the song South Street, which was a hit by the Orleans.
Right, written by Dave Apple. Right?
And
Dave
probably Bernie Lowe, maybe.
And we had Dave here. Dave was on one of my first shows. Yeah.
Well, the other interesting thing is to go back to the whole Beatle thing. Is that the fact that I'll come back to this, but Charlene, I knew as working when I was at Tower Records. She was my Capitol Records rep. So I was in luck because all this new, in the 90s, all this new Beatle material was coming out from the BBC on through the anthology.
And so I had it.
And so she would send me this stuff directly to my attention, so I'd have everything. And I still have all that. Anyway, going back.
Wait, I have to interject here. George, when we were working on the Beatles Fab Four party, George actually sent me an email, and it was a photograph of one of the mailing labels on a piece of Beatles display material that I had sent to him in the 90s from Capitol, and there was my name, Charlene, Capitol Records, to George Manney, and he still had the label, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, because when you're a collector, believe it or not, sometimes the packaging is just as important to the actual document. Even when you come to the records with the picture sleeves, the picture sleeve is worth more than the vinyl.
Right, I know.
Except when you go back to the vinyl that came out in the first pressing of EMMY in England. Right. So that's worth a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Vinyl-wise.
I'm sure.
So I was veering off with these, going back to the documentary.
J.C. Meet Me on South Street at Jobs. Right.
So that brought the attention of Philadelphia Weekly newspaper, and they called me and wanted to do a little article about the J.C. Dobbs documentary. So when they sent over Michael Allen Goldberg, why am I going blank on his name?
That's okay. And they sent the reporter over.
Wait, well, Michael came over to do the interview. he found out more about me and saw all these archival recordings and photos and newspapers. Then he went back to the Philadelphia Weekly and said, listen, I think this might be able to turn into a cover story. So it did. So when it came out, unbeknownst to me, that the Dead Milkmen in Philadelphia,
yeah, remember the Dead Milkmen?
They took the newspaper with the article with me, I was on the front cover, they sent it to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Within the week of that coming out, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame called and they wanted to come to the house. And they did. They set up an appointment, they came to my house.
So the people from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame actually came to your house in Philadelphia to look at your memorabilia.
They took photographs.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
And they asked for some donations.
They asked for some donations.
And
I'm sure you donated some things.
So over the past few years, I've been donating to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's a collection now. It's called the Collection on the Philadelphia Music Scene. And it's it's from 1941 to the present.
Which leads me into my next question. I know you've been working on another film called Philly Pop Music, and I know it's been a project of yours for about 10 years now. What's happening with that? And what is that all about?
It encompasses all the music out of Philadelphia.
Starting from the 40s or the 20s?
Anything was popular music.
Okay.
That's why I wrote pop music. Okay. And popular music, back in the day, I think one of the first big pop artists were actually Les Paul and Mary Ford.
Yes, my parents used to listen to them.
So anything popular, even you would have jazz artists cover pop material, including like Miles Davis did Time After Time in the 80s after Cyndi Lauper made it a hit.
Right.
So anything popular, that's what I wanted to cover, and I've always been proud of the music out of Philadelphia. I never understood why there was never a documentary on it.
Right.
There's never been really books that covered encompassed the whole city, because it's so diverse between the ethnic background and the musical background.
Right.
So that's what I started 10 years ago, and that was and all this started after a bad thing that happened in my life when I got run over by a car. So that's why I started to do that.
Let's take a break here and look at some images.
Oh, okay.
What's this, George? Oh, it's the Who at the Electric Factory.
That was.
Oh my gosh, 1969. Wow.
That was for the first show that they performed Tommy in the United States.
That's pretty amazing that you have.
I also have the board mix from the show.
You do?
Yes. Harry Maslin, who was actually the Electric Factory
sound guy,
sound man, I sent him a copy, and he said when they came in that night, they came in with their own PA system. It was a WEM. He said he to this day says it was like listening to the record live. And when you hear this board mix, it's unbelievable.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
And then this is from last year.
Is that Charlie,
2013.
Is that you?
Charlie Gracie. That's me.
Right, Charlie Gracie. Let's talk a little bit about Charlie Gracie. He had a huge #1 hit in England called Butterfly, right? Didn't that make it to #1 in England, I believe?
And maybe #2 here?
Yeah, maybe I'm not sure.
And then he had Fabulous, which became, the hits became bigger in England than they did here.
Yeah, absolutely bigger. And Charlie's in his mid-70s now, and he's still playing kick-butt guitar. I saw this man last summer perform with George, and he was phenomenal. The energy level was just way up there.
So McCartney actually paid tribute to Charlie when he covered his song Fabulous. He did it as a CD single B-side, and then he did it live at the Cavern Club for the first time.
Neat. So who do we have here?
In the middle is Joe Tarsia.
I just sat with him at an event last week.
and then next to Joe is Billy Paul.
Billy Paul.
And
what was his famous song?
Me and Mrs. Jones.
Me and Mrs. Jones.
That's the guy that's saying Me and Mrs. Jones?
Yeah, that's
very cool.
And he's from our area. He's actually lives in New Jersey now, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he does.
And a real good friend of mine.
I think Keith likes that song.
You know, it reminds me of growing up.
Got a thing going on.
My parents,
And so that was an event that was for actually they gave him and Charlie a plaque on the Walk of Fame.
Right.
And I was down there that day to film the event for the archives and for my film.
Sure.
And that's what that is, a little bit of a little background on the film.
Nice.
And the nice thing about the film is that...
Is that the logo for it?
That was actually, I did a little radio thing, podcasting.
Right, okay.
With some of the archives. There's things that never came out. So I have a lot of this. And
Right.
What I did partner with, this is Tommy Stinson.
Right.
Tommy Stinson was originally in a band called The Replacements. When they got signed, he went on tour. He was 16 years old.
Replacements.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And so for the last 15 years, he's been the bass player for Guns N' Roses, though.
Right.
And it was actually through Chip, who's all the way over here, guitar player I played with many years ago. It's his niece who now is married with Tommy. He called me up one day and said Tommy had some ideas, and so he came over to my studio, and we cut like 3 tracks I was playing drums on. And Tommy goes, okay, can you do me a favor and mix your drum tracks down?
Wow.
Then he took them back, and the next thing I know, I get a phone call from Chip saying, well, you made it, you're on his record.
Well, that's great.
I'm like, oh.
That's pretty exciting.
And this was, we did a gig at the North Star Bar
Or a little North Star.
about a year ago or so. That's what and we did a song. The song was, it's a drag.
It's a drag,
Yeah.
but that wasn't a drag.
No. And so this was from
Here
the
we go.
Walk of Fame.
That's definitely from the. Oh, I know who those folks are. Why don't you tell everybody who's in that photo, though?
I can't remember which woman. The second woman over here is Dee Dee Sharp,
That's right.
and who was used to be married to Kenny Gamble at one time, and Charlie Gracie, Billy Paul, and then one of these women is the relative of Clifford Brown, the real famous jazz musician.
Yeah, that I wouldn't know.
And I think the other one is, why am I going blank on the woman who sang with Marvin Gaye from Philadelphia? Who was that?
Well, that's Tammy Terrell.
Yes, that's her sister, I believe. So it was,
Right.
they gave them all plaques on the Walk of Fame
Nice.
that day.
Very nice. Is that it, or do we have any more photos? Oh,
Yeah,
we're back
that's
to the
it.
Who.
Back to the Who.
I know, we are back to the Who.
And this over here is a friend of yours, Bobby Starr.
I haven't seen him in 25 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a long time.
What
You
did
were
you
a
say?
baby. I haven't
5
seen him
years?
in like 25 years.
Oh, okay.
But I'm only 30, so you know.
That's right.
We're all 30 at WTER.
Right.
So George, you've lived such a great and fun, rocking, and rolling musical life, and I know you have so much more to share with us, so I would love to invite you to come back. This is Charlene for Front Row and WTER, and George Manney and I thank you for listening and thank you for watching. Good night.